Hey, good morning. Actually, good afternoon, I should say. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Brenda Meller with Meller Marketing. We are live on LinkedIn and live on Facebook for another edition of Social Media Pie. I'm very excited. I have my very special guest with me today, Barbara Boldt. Barbara, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. It's so nice to be with you, Brenda. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. And Barbara and I were talking a little bit before we jumped on the session here today. And when I first introduce people, I like to kind of mention how I know the individuals that are featured. And Barbara and I, we've been connected for a while. And I was trying to remember, Barbara, if you and I originally met through Inforum or if it was through the Troy Chamber.
It was one of
probably
those
Inforum.
two. Yeah, it might have been Troy and Forum, I think.
Okay. Yeah, one of those. But it was Barbara's one of those people that once I connected with her, we just like our energy levels were very similar. Our approaches to working with and supporting people, I think we're very similar in our approaches. And she's just one of these people I'm just, I'm kind of drawn to. Like, you've got this magnetism about you, Barbara, and I always learn from you. And we spoke at a conference together. I think it was about a year ago, Michigan Women Forward, the Women
Yes.
Up and Learn event. Was that about a year ago? Or was that 2 years ago now? It feels like time's
Probably
flying
two. It could have been last spring, though. It could have been last spring. And then I think we were both speaking at the Troy Not-for-Profit Conference together as well. We were both involved in that. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, very
We
good.
have
But Barbara,
places.
yeah, we have a lot of carry the same company, and we were even at an event once. It was at the Michigan Design Center, and I looked across from like, oh, Barbara's here. I got to go say hi to her. Like we see each other.
We were having lunch together. That was great.
We did. It was nice to catch up. So very, very excited you're here for to join us. The special viewers and guests that are joining us here, you're joining us on LinkedIn Live or Facebook Live. We'd love it if you could drop us a comment below. Let us know where in the world you're watching us from. I'm in Fraser, Michigan, which is in Macomb County. Barbara, where are you at?
I'm in Farmington, which is in Oakland County, just west of Detroit.
Very good. And we may have others that are joining us here from Michigan. We may have from different states in the U.S. and even from different countries in the world. So we'd love it if you could drop us a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. And since we're in this day and age, Barbara, of COVID, where in the house you're located. I'm in my home office. It looks like you might be in a home office. Is that correct? Sometimes we have visitors and guests that are sharing, they're at their kitchen table, they're working from the living room, they're working in the patio, they're upstairs in their bedroom. So where in the world and where in the house you're located, because we're all kind of in this working from home. Although I am hearing some folks that are returning now to the workplace. And, we're going to see what happens there. But, we're here today to have a great conversation with all of you. And Barbara's going to be talking about your virtual image, because this is still going to be very important as we roll through the rest of the summer and even into the fall and maybe the rest of the year. So Barbara, before we jump into that conversation, why don't you, if you could, give us a background. Who is Barbara Boldt? What's your business all about? And then we'll jump into the conversation here today.
Great. Happy to. Thank you. I'm an executive communication skills coach. My company is called Bold Global. It is pretty much just me at this point, but I love helping people become effective communicators out in the world. And some of what I do is directly related to presentation skills. My sweet spot is helping non-native speakers of English present effectively, because I lived in Europe for 20 years and I've worked with a lot of people whose mother tongue is not English. I also do some leadership communication related to helping people become confident in a boardroom, making a presentation. Some of my clients are introverts and find it challenging when they're promoted into a leadership position to make that impression they need to make with their colleagues. So that's kind of another niche that I work in.
Okay. And you've been self-employed for how long? Do you used to work for companies, or have you always been self-employed?
I've been self-employed for a really long time. My first career way back in, I won't even say how long ago, but I was in medical sales for a number of years early in my career. And I worked for companies, but I usually worked from home because I was in sales. So I was independent. When I moved to Europe, I worked for a language school in Milan for a number of years where I had to show up every day. And I was a sort of employee in the Italian context there. But then I went freelance, and the way my life worked in Europe was that I was a freelancer, but then I always had an academic connection. I was an adjunct in sometimes several different universities. That has not followed me back to the US. I've been back in the US for 7 years now, and that academic piece hasn't really fallen into place here. So now I'm pretty much a consultant.
Awesome. You're living the good life. You have the best boss in the world and you're having fun helping your clients, right?
Yeah, I've had to learn a lot. And of course, you as a social media guru, that is probably my weak spot. I struggle with keeping up and just the energy that it takes to stay present. So that's one of the reasons I'm super happy to be on today, because this is helping me out.
There you go, right? We're pressing our comfort zones a little bit. And sometimes I tell people, if you're feeling the feeling of butterflies when you're doing something new, that's a good thing, because you're spreading your wings, you're testing some things out. The more often you do these things, the better you get at them. And we learn from each other too. And that's what I love when I saw you present, Barbara, back at it was at Wayne State University. I remember you being up at stage and you just talking about your presence and your approach and your way you're communicating as a leader, and how it's kind of cementing in people's minds your expertise. And there's certain techniques that you shared that day that I learned from, that I've learned techniques from you. So let's shift into this conversation. So your virtual image, how are you showing up online? And give us a little bit of the backstory there. Is this something you've been working on all along, or is this a recent shift for you in your business due to COVID, or tell us a little about that?
Well, I've been working online for quite a while. I can work with people from anywhere in the world, but those are usually coaching sessions. They aren't always necessarily presentations or something formal. Mm-hmm. But obviously this became a bigger topic when COVID broke out, and we all had to start showing up online. And one of the things, so for anybody who's confused, we're not really talking about like your website today. We're talking about how you actually show up when you're virtual. When you're in this kind of situation, it being interviewed in a meeting, you might be presenting, you might just be participating. One of the things that's really interesting is that if you are not the main presenter in a virtual situation, it's very easy to start doing things that aren't so attractive.
Drinking your coffee, or
yeah, I've seen people eating. I've seen people drinking. The coffee mug and having that available isn't so horrible.
Is that okay? I can sip, right? It's not.
You can sip. You can sip. That's fine. Chewing, I have a little bit more of a problem with, and I think that you need to be very familiar with the people you're on with if you're going to be eating. My brother, we were doing online beer night sessions for my brother during COVID. And he's used to going to the bar, getting something to eat. So he would be on this beer night call, just chomping on his pizza. And it was just, they were friends and it was personal. So that's okay. But it wasn't elegant by any means. And we were a little bit appalled at first.
Yeah.
So there are all these different situations that we can be in the virtual world. And the first thing I like to remind people is that, and I think obviously as COVID has gone on, we've all gotten better at these things too. Earlier on, I was seeing more crazy things online. I think all of us were.
I'm putting the comment below because I'm kind of curious when people are watching this right now, like what's the oddest thing you've seen in a virtual meeting?
I think some of us know the oddest thing that went viral was that woman going to the bathroom. But
I think it's unfortunate that, but you have to imagine that's not just her, that's happened to other people. And if you're on the phone, Barbara, you probably know this too. If you're joining a Zoom from a phone, the only pane you can see is yours or the speaker. Or rather the speaker's pane. So unless you know that everybody can see, I mean, she probably wasn't even aware of that.
Remembered that. Yeah.
Right.
But she's people doing other crazy things. I mean, I was speaking to a group of people one day and one woman had her camera on, but she was like changing bed in the background. We could see this activity. And it was very distracting to me as the speaker, but also just sort of like, do you really want people to be watching you do this?
Right.
So it's thinking about your behavior, I think, is the most important thing. And remembering that virtual space is a public space.
Right.
You and I are both in our homes. We just said we were in our home offices, but people can see us.
Right.
And that's what's easy to forget when you're just kind of hanging out at home.
Right. What do you think, like, Barbara, you're in your home office, but what's behind you and what is behind me is intentional. You know, meaning we don't have any client confidential documents that are sitting out or,
everything mess, particularly, right?
What's that?
No mess.
No mess. No, it's intentional. And you think about when reporters on TV, they always are intentional about the background that's behind them. And what I see when I see Barbara right now is there's a lot of books that are behind her. I see some binders, and I'm imagining some of those are courses that she's created or she's attended. And a lot of the books, it shows me that she is very focused on academics and learning, and it's sending a certain type of message, right?
Yeah, there you go. And I've been told that I should clean off the top of that bookshelf back there if I'm really creating a video that I would publish.
Now, but, I see something over your, I don't know which shoulder it is. It looks like a certificate or an award or something. Is that what that is?
That is, I can't remember what it was for, and I can't, ATD. It was ATD.
Oh, ATD, Association of Training and Development. Did I get that right?
And not anymore. It's Association for Talent Development now.
Okay.
They changed their name about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And over here, I have my plaques for being a good teacher and my university plaque. So yeah, but it is important to think about what is in the background. And I
just noticed I had something hanging in my background. Do you see that? That's my lighting kit. I had to move it out of frame. There we go.
There you go. Well, and sometimes people walk by, some people walk into the room, dogs show up, cats show up. All of those things can be fine. And actually, one of the things I've realized during COVID is that people like some of that. Yeah. They like getting a more personal sense of their colleagues. But of course, if you were actually presenting for some reason, you probably wouldn't want those kinds of interruptions.
Right.
So it's really thinking about the fact that if your camera is on, people can see you, and you need to be aware of what you're doing with your body. Mm-hmm. When I teach presentation skills in person, we talk a lot about staying still, not rocking, not all that. Well, there can be a lot of unintentional movement in this context as well.
Okay.
So trying to stand still or sit still. Mm-hmm. Where your eyes are is very important. Yeah. People understand if you're distracted, if you're not paying attention. Have you ever seen anybody show up and just they're like this? Because they're looking at their screen and their camera's over here.
Yeah.
So figuring out where your camera is, being straight on with it, and when you're speaking, making sure that you're really looking into that camera so that people get the sense that you're with them.
Right. So what are your thoughts on, as you're talking about this, you make me think, because I've been in a lot of Zoom sessions, and sometimes it's like, I don't want to say the conversation rambles on, but the conversation's rambling on, and we get this Zoom fatigue, because you're on all the time and you're having to be like in a meeting. You might be sitting around a conference room table and you can see the person that you're facing towards, or as you look to the right or the left. So there's like one person looking at you in a Zoom, like all eyes are on you the whole time. So you're kind of feeling like you need to be making a great impression. So what are your thoughts on muting your video in a session? What's the etiquette on that, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it really depends to some degree on the situation. Mm-hmm. I always mute my video if I'm going to do something. Like if I move away from my camera, I turn it off first. If I'm going to put lipstick on, I turn off my video first.
You don't put that right on camera, like just get on and.
Something, but not always.
No,
and
I know.
Like even if you're going to drink or eat something, turn off your video. But be aware that what's the assumption when we turn off our video?
That we're not paying attention, right?
Exactly. And it's usually true. It's usually the fact that somebody's multitasking somehow. So choose your moment. And I would say don't leave it off terribly long if the expectation is that it's on.
Okay.
I do also find that it's stressful in situations where people want you to keep it on all the time.
Right.
I'm in a class that I'm taking right now, and you're supposed to keep your camera on for the whole 2.5 hours of this course. And that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's really a lot. And it's very fatiguing. So I think there also has to be some acknowledgement by the person running the event that you need to give people breaks.
Yeah.
You need to keep interventions short. Have you been on any Zoom meetings where somebody dominates?
Right.
Yeah. Where somebody's going on and on and on. That's not appropriate in this context. It's really not appropriate ever. But in this situation where we have fewer, our senses can sense less about what's going on because we're just not in the same room with people. It's very tiring for someone to drone on and other people having to listen to that. So good etiquette is keep your intervention short, allow space. So we can only talk one at a time on these things. It's very difficult to interrupt. You kind of have to interrupt, don't you, if you want to take the floor. So as the person organizing the whatever the intervention is online, make sure you're leaving moments where other people can come in, other people, and make it intentional. Now I'm going to open it up. Or Brenda, what do you have? What's your idea about this? What we're talking about? you have to be, I think, more than in an in-person meeting, you have to think about, I was going to say that in Italian.
You can say it in Italian. We might have somebody from Italy attending today. They'll be like, ooh.
Sometimes words just come to me in Italian instead of English.
How many languages do you speak, Barbara?
Well, I say parts of 4.
Wow.
I'm fluent in English most days. I'm fluent in Italian. My French is kind of intermediate, and my German is so-and-so.
Oh, guten Tag. That's about all I know, so don't go further than that.
It's really weird. I get some Google invites in German. I don't know why. From one organization, they show up in German with the time in Europe. It's very weird. Really? And so with those people, I'm always saying, guten Tag.
Yeah.
Wie geht's es Ihnen?
Wie geht's es Ihnen? It's funny how when we learn languages, and I took like 4 years of German in high school, and I remember like a poem in German, like a whole poem from start to finish. And anytime I meet somebody who speaks German, they'll say it to me, and I'll recite it. And I did this for my son. One of his friends was taking German in high school, and they couldn't, pick out many of the words. But it's kind of interesting how certain things stick in our head. And you said the Italian phrase. We're getting way off path here. So what was it we were talking about?
Oh, well, I wanted to go back to one thing about thinking about what you're wearing.
Okay.
I think it's the joke right now is that we're all dressed from the waist up, right?
We
pay attention to what is what people can see. Right. And that's important. I would say, like today, I have on real pants. So I dress all the way up so that I felt like I was professional, that I felt like I was dressed. There's something about being dressed from the waist up and hanging out in these shorts at the bottom that, you might not always feel as professional as you'd like to in a situation. So think about what you're wearing. Makeup for women is important. We do become either washed out or people. So we want to have, if it's important, like I know in some people I've spoken with in their teams where they meet like every day, they've made a deal, no makeup.
Yeah. No,
fine.
That's nice. Yeah.
That's fine. But I was involved in a virtual happy hour the other night. And there weren't very many of us on. It was a very small group. And one woman chose to come super cash. Like end of the work day, she hadn't put on any makeup. She just was there, which is fine. However, I doubt if she would have gone to a networking event outside of her house looking like that.
Yeah. And it's the same. I mean, you're making an impression on people. And sometimes it feels a little bit more casual. Sometimes I agree with you than you would do in person if you were to go out. But I loved your point about the makeup, Barbara. And right before, we joined a couple minutes earlier, and I always kind of bring you guys behind the scenes so you can kind of come along with me on this journey, right? And we got on and we were chitty-chatting, and I said, oh, I need to go touch up my makeup real quick. And wear makeup or not. I mean, it's up to you. It's a personal preference if you do. But ladies, if we wear makeup, I mean, I just touch up my lipstick a little bit and I put a little bit more blush on before I jumped on, and even like powder your face because the light's kind of like making me, as the day goes on, I have this great skin that's oily, and that's what keeps me young looking, I guess, right? But by the end of the day, I'm shiny, right? So it's important. And I said, Barbara, I need to go touch up my makeup real quick before we jump on. It's important. It is an important thing.
It is. I keep this little lipstick thingy. It's actually a Burt's Bees thing. Where's my
Let me make you a little bit larger. There you go.
There we go.
That's cool. Yeah.
Where this is coming, but it's there it is. I just keep it on my desk.
Yep.
And I throw it on. It's not the ideal color, and if I were going out, but I find now when I'm going out, I'm like, oh gosh, I have to put on a mask. I don't want lipstick on. So all my lipsticks should just be right here on my desk because I'm not using them in my handbag anymore. Yeah. That's kind of a crazy thing about this.
Yeah, no, it's very true. So
another thing I wanted to bring up is what we do with our hands, because I think this is something that happens a lot for people, particularly if they're not the star of the show or they're not speaking. I was on something the other day where there was it was the Zoom screen with probably all of the squares filled.
Yeah.
It was an event and we were watching something. And what I noticed was some of the people, they were like this, they were like this, they were, this isn't so bad, but what you really want to do is avoid like covering your mouth. Yeah. So keeping the hands down. If it's something long and it's like a class or something you're sitting through, I think there's more. It's okay. At some point you're going to do this.
If I sit back a little bit and different points. Right. It's 2.5 hours Zoom. I want to get my back a little bit of a break because I'm not young, Barbara.
Sure. But that was like on being on display
Yeah.
on that thing. So then we really need to think about what our hands are doing. And
Mhm.
then if we want to be gesturing at all, we've got to move them up. We've
Right.
got to bring our hands into the screen. I just watched, as I was telling you before we started, Brenda, 10 videos from this course that I teach in Switzerland, and all the grades had to be turned in today. So I just watched all these videos the last few days.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And some people I could tell were sort of gesturing, but their hands weren't, I couldn't see them.
Were they outside of the frame, like right my hands, and you can just see little fingers popping up versus
like
you kind of have to be aware of where the frame is.
Yeah, but I couldn't tell what they meant to add to the conversation with their hands. Okay. So if in fact you want to make a strong point when you're presenting on Zoom or any platform, you've got to raise your hands up a little bit. You don't want them in front of your face, obviously. You don't want them up this high. However, here, 1, 2, 3, whatever you're going to do with your hands, just make sure they're a little higher up so that people can see them.
What do you think, Barbara, about if you're trying to make a point, leaning into the camera a little bit?
I actually think that's okay. I like that.
I use it a little bit. I use it a little bit humorously. I might say, "Okay, you guys, I want to make a point. Are you guys paying attention to me right now?" Like I do, and then it creates a little bit of levity, and then it does bring the attention back.
Yes.
But I wouldn't do it like, you need to be talking with me.
Right. You don't want to be too in the face.
Right.
The other thing I've noticed is that some people have louder voices than other people. Mm-hmm. More emotion in the voice, more volume. That can get wearing over time.
Right.
So you definitely want to think about your tonality, how loud you're being, and you want to vary that. You know, maybe some moments you want to be louder because you want to make a point, but you don't want to keep it at that high volume because it wears on people. And again, because hearing is one of the senses that is active in this context, it gets worn out. We get the vision and the listening are the two things that kind of wear out first, or we get most tired from. Right. And the other senses, like our smell doesn't function in this environment, touch doesn't, those are just hanging there. But your brain is still trying to connect with people on that basis. So I do think for anyone who knows for a fact that their voice can tend to be booming or quite maybe intimidating is probably too strong of a word, but you want to moderate both the intonation and the volume as you speak so that you're not just wearing yourself out.
Right.
Or wearing the other people out as well.
Yeah. It can be a little exhausting. And I've even had those too where, and I'm wearing like little earphones right now, but like some people talking, I have to like crank the volume up because they're very soft spoken. And then other people are very boisterous. And I'm like, ooh, where's that volume button? Let's turn that all the way down.
Well, and I've been on some, I think it's mostly Google Meets things where it seems like the volume is like accentuated for some reason. And I have to actually go into my settings and alter the volume there to get it down. Just hitting my volume button on my computer doesn't work. So sometimes you really have to mess around to get the volume where you want it. I just saw somebody put something up on backgrounds.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions. I mean, let's actually, if it's okay, we'll move into Q&A and then we'll probably continue the conversation as we're doing this right now. So there's a couple of questions that came up on backdrops. So this is, I guess, a question for you, Barbara. What are your thoughts on backdrops? And I'm curious too. We've got the IRL, the in real life backdrops, like the ones that you can actually buy that are kind of like a mounted banner.
Yes.
Or there's the virtual backdrops, which are the green screen generated, Zoom has them, or you can upload your own. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the virtual ones are tricky. The ones that just stand behind you, I think there's not much that can go wrong with those, and they can cover up a messy room or a space or create a consistent background. And I think that's nice. The virtual ones, it's funny because I just saw this morning on one of the videos I was watching. This guy had the virtual background behind him and he had on headphones. And as he moved, it made it look like his headphones were going on and off. It was just kind of funny to see it. Yeah. I had to concentrate to notice that. Yeah. But I do think this thing of the floating head.
Yeah.
And if you move too much, you get fuzzy.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy about them, I have to say.
It almost feels a little bit like, I remember, sometimes when you're watching movies and they're computer generated images, and then you feel a little bit of a disconnect with what you're watching on screen because you're not quite trusting it anymore. And I feel like the same way when I'm in a call and I see the virtual background and the fuzziness and the pixelation, I kind of feel like they're hiding something, and I know, I mean, they're hiding their messy room behind them, but I'd rather see
kids or
whatever. And I get it, but I'd rather see just, flat in the background, or an actual,
and again, it depends on context. I think professionally, I wouldn't use one unless I was very sure that it was going to be effective. When you're hanging out with your friends, like your brother's beer night or whatever, somebody was putting a bar scene in the back.
Yeah.
It was very cool. But so that kind of thing can be fun, but I don't think that they're very professional. I don't think they work super in professional contexts.
What about this question? Personal photos and mementos in the background. And as you answer that, I'm going to grab what I have over my shoulder so you guys can see it up a little bit closer here.
I think personal photos and mementos, as long as you don't have a privacy issue with it, are fine. People like to know that you have a family, that you know a little bit about your personal life, like you would see in an office.
Yeah.
If you went into someone's office, you might see pictures of their kids, you might see pictures of their dog, whatever.
Right.
I think that's fine to have in a background.
Yeah. So I have like behind me, I've got like a stage and I've got like a plant and diplomas and other things over. But then I also this it's my black printer that's over there. I always sit things on, and I strategically will place things based on who I'm talking with. So today I have Troy Chamber of Commerce, and I just received my renewal certificate for that. And then I mean, sometimes I do put mementos. So this is a picture of my mom that I have in the back, and she passed away years ago from cancer, and I do a lot of activities related to supporting the American Cancer Society. And every now and then I've got like a bookshelf of little mementos. I'll swap things out just so I have different backgrounds. So that's a little bit of family. And then I have, if you guys know, I love pie. This will probably get banned off of YouTube now because I've got a 4-letter word in there. But my sister-in-law, I don't think she's watching today, but she got this for me when we were in Florida. And I was like, I love pie. I love coffee. So I think having those little mementos in the background, but I think about, Barbara, if you do a lot of calls, sometimes I like to mix it up and put different things over my shoulder. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think that's a good idea. If people might be seeing you repetitively, so you're like for what you do with these interviews, you're showing up frequently. I think it's a nice idea to change things up a little bit. And it's a matter of interest. It's a matter of keeping it fresh and showing that you take that into consideration. I think that's part of it, is that, oh, she cares about what's in her background. She cares about how it looks and what is back there. I don't ever change mine. The only thing I do is sometimes make sure that closet door back there is shut.
Oh, there you go.
But I would like to get more creative with my backgrounds. And you and I both know Carrie Lazat. She's great at helping you figure out how high your camera should be and what should be in the background and all those good things. So there's a whole kind of I think production element, if you will. But I think for most people working from home, participating in meetings, company meetings, they don't have to worry as much about that.
So how about this question from Cynthia? What do you think about that? Bookshelf in the background, is that a good thing if you're doing a job interview? What do you think, Barbara?
I think it's not a bad thing, but I think there are a lot of other things you could have back there. If you just had a nice picture or a flat wall or anything that would look uncluttered and professional, I think would be fine.
Okay.
Bookshelf maybe, but not necessarily absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to.
Okay. Awesome. And we're kind of going into some Q&A here, guys. So continue to drop your questions below if you have questions for Barbara. We'll continue the conversation here, some additional elements that we're talking about today, which is the topic of your virtual image. How are you showing up online? So what I've been hearing you talk about so far, we've been talking about, appearance. This is important. We're talking about what appears behind us in the camera view. We're also talking about our voice, our tonality, what about rate of speech too, Barbara? Let's talk about that.
Slower is better, for sure, in this context. I always preach measured pace. I like speaking not too slowly, but the thing about pace of speech is that people can't absorb what you're saying so well if you speak super, super fast. Now, I know there are people who disagree with that. And Michael Jeffries is one of them because he loves to speak at a very rapid pace.
So he says talk fast, right?
He loves to talk fast, and he believes in it. He believes that it's just as effective as talking slower. I would beg to differ slightly, just because I think there is something about the brain and how much it can absorb at one time. But particularly when in this context, when we don't have all of our other senses working for us, I do believe that speaking somewhat more slowly than you might normally can be helpful for people to really get what it is you're saying.
Okay. And Barbara, you're doing this technique right now. You're talking, and I'm doing it too. You see how I'm controlling my rate of speech so that you can process what I just said. You know, versus
pauses.
Versus talking fast. It's like we need a little bit of white space to process what we just heard before our brain can be ready to hear the next thing that you're saying, right?
Exactly. And I think in the virtual context, that's maybe a bit more true even than in the in-person context. Yeah. Pauses are another fantastic thing to learn to use. Waiting, giving a space, not following on rapidly with the next thing you're going to say. Another thing, if you are actually presenting information online, is clear signposting. You want to be leading people through your intervention, what you're going to say. Now let's switch to this topic, or now let's go on to the next slide. That's always a really good thing to do. Right. But in the virtual context, people need more input. Right. They want it. They need to know more. Oh, so the next thing I'm going to cover is lighting. Right. We got
insert question about lighting now. Here we go. So, I mean, I agree with you. And there's someone who does this really well in her live. Cher Jones, I believe is her name. I'm going to find it and I'll drop it in the comments below. But she'll do like a LinkedIn Live, and she'll have like a 30-minute, I have to put it inside, 30-minute segment. And it'll say like, here are the 4 topics I'm going to be talking about. And she'll highlight each of them as she's going through it. I'm like, wow, she's brilliant. And I learned from her. And we've been making this a little bit more conversational today. And we've been covering a lot, but let's talk about lighting. You know, what are your thoughts there? And we did this before we joined the call today here.
Right? My lighting is not great today, so don't take a tip from me about it.
It's not bad. You know, I mean, even let's try this. You want to do this? We're going to do this like impromptu. Let's both turn off our lights right now, just so people can see what do we look like without our lights on. Because I think sometimes the behind the scenes stuff is really helpful. Look at the difference there, you guys. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Now, I mean, she's got really nice, Barbara has really nice natural lighting behind her, but the light is not on her face. Let's put them back on again. And mine takes a second for my camera to sync up with it. But I have, and I'm going to turn my camera angle. I've got a box light right here, and I've got a box light on the other side over here. And I've been tweaking a little bit as we go, but we were also talking about ring lights, Barbara, and those.
That's what I want to get is a ring light. My desk is set up toward the wall, so I think I could set a ring light up right behind my computer here. What I've got right now is just a desk light on an arm. Yep. That's what you're seeing the effect of right now, and it's very yellow, and I can't get it where I need it. It won't go where I need it to go.
But I wish I could take some of your yellow, because I feel like my box light, it has like a white screen, and I need like an amber tone. So you're like, oh, mine's not perfect, and I'm like, oh, mine's not perfect. Like we're both like picking ourselves apart, but you guys could see when we turned off our light the difference it makes.
Well, and the important thing is to not be backlit. Right. If you've got a window behind you, nobody's going to see your face. And that was a comment I made for a few people on these videos I was grading today. Yeah. They were either lit from the side, or we couldn't see their face clearly. And that's the goal. Yeah. You want to be able to see people, to be able to see your face clearly. So thinking about lighting and what you have like I have a window right here. Right. Early in the morning, the sun blares in there. So I put the blind down, and I use this, and it sets up a better lighting than that bright sunlight coming in and kind of being on my one side. Yeah. Oh, did we talk about camera angle?
Before we go on, I want to just summarize what we were hearing about lighting there too. Barbara and I, we both, what I hear you saying, Barbara, is you test things out. You figure out, is the natural light best? Is the lamp light? Even like before we jumped on live today, you and I both were playing with our lighting and camera angles. So try different things, try a desk lamp, get a ring light. They're pretty cheap on Amazon nowadays. Or if you don't have a ring light, just, find a desk lamp or a tall standing lamp, but test out the lighting. And you can even just go into Zoom yourself and just walk around the house and try lighting in different places, right? You don't need to sit in the office.
You might want to change the room. You might, or the direction you are in the room. There can be a myriad of different ways you can set yourself up for not tons of money.
Yeah. Just using what you have. So now let's talk about camera angle.
We did kind of talk about that a little earlier. The important thing is that you want to be at eye level. You don't want people to be looking up your nose, as we say.
Yeah. That's, I love that. This is the Carrie Lazat technique. Did she teach you this too? Like, point from your eyeballs straight to the camera. It should be like a lateral line. It shouldn't be angled up or angled down. Most people, if you're using the laptop camera, it's angled up, and then we're kind of looking, like you said, up the nose on it. And even like propping a couple books or something underneath your laptop to keep it flat can be better, right?
Right. And the thing you want is to be close enough that people can see you. You don't want to be this little dot in the, way back here.
I love it.
Yeah. And you, so that people have the sense that you're in the image, you're in that square, and you're filling up most of it. That's what I would say. Is that how you like to think about it?
Yeah, I think that's great. And then you touched on this a little bit earlier as well, but I want you to repeat the point again for those who maybe joined a little bit late. You're in a Zoom session, and looking at the camera versus looking at people on screen. What directional points would you give for folks on that?
That's always hard, because it's very hard, I find, not to look at the person who's speaking. And if the person who's speaking is down in the corner, or, your eyes are going to go down there, sometimes you can tell who's speaking because everybody's eyes are, going in that direction. If you're the speaker, however, you need to try your best to look straight ahead. And it's hard also not to look at yourself. And sometimes that's actually a good thing, because if you're looking at yourself, you're going to stay present to what you look like and what you're doing. And is there something that's not playing well here? Yeah. So I don't like to completely turn myself off or not. I find that really almost disorienting.
Okay.
But it is, what you really don't want is that whole thing of looking at a screen over here and not looking at your camera.
Yeah.
I was coaching a guy, he's actually Italian and lives in Italy, earlier in the year. And he was always looking over here, but I was over here. And and then every now and then he'd turn over here and look at, and this was his screen that he was looking for data on. His camera was over here. And it was actually, his camera was here. So you got to know where your camera is and be looking into it as best you can and as directly as you can. And I mean, Carrie says stuff like, even put your computer up on books. It's better to have it a little bit looking down at you than you looking
up at it. And I've heard too, like, if you're in a Zoom session where you're a participant, and I'm gonna say Troy Chamber, I think Tara's watching right now and Chuck's watching. There's a couple other Troy Chamber members watching right now. So if everyone else is talking, I watch the screen, like that Brady Bunch grid, or the Muppet grid, whatever you call it, where you can watch everybody else as they're talking. But then when we go around to introductions and I introduce myself, all right, I'm looking at the camera at this point, because when I look at the camera, I am making engagement with you when I am talking to the camera. But then after I'm done and Barbara's doing her introduction, then I'm going to look down again. So you can see the level of engagement looking at the camera versus not looking at the camera, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely. Yeah. And you want to at least appear engaged most of the time.
Yeah.
Because people are watching you.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's a point Pam makes, I think in the beginning we gave each other a little bit more leeway on, she's just working out of her home. But now this is a little bit more permanent, Barbara. What are your thoughts here on, upgrading the background, the space, the equipment? What do you think of that? Necessary? Is it worth the investment?
Well, I think honestly that more virtual work is with us to stay. I think more people are going to be working from home at least part of the time. So having a workspace, a work from home space that is both comfortable, but also gives a professional impression, I think can be very important depending on what you do. Okay. If you know that you're going to be going back to the office full time shortly, and then your kitchen table is fine. Then you can stay at that kitchen table. However, I think for some people, an investment in some type of infrastructure.
Right.
If you're a manager, if you're somebody who's showing up at meetings, if people need to have this is our professional presence.
Mm-hmm.
This is who we are. This is what we do. And so we have to take care with it.
Right.
We have to absolutely pay attention. And I think for some people, they may have to make some type of infrastructure investment for the longer term, if in fact this type of working is going to be in their long-term future.
Yeah, really good point. So yeah, right. And as we start to wrap here, Barbara, I imagine that, your business has shifted. Are you doing, I know you do speaking engagements in person because I've seen you. Are you doing virtual speaking engagements as well?
I have done some. Yes, I've done a few webinars. I've done one for the collab space in Macomb County.
Okay.
I spoke for the Southfield Chamber. So I've done several webinar kind of things, but these really aren't webinars, are they? Because people can see us. So they're really more like online presentations. Yeah. And I enjoy them. I have a lot of fun with them. Yeah. And there's some are more interactive than others.
Yeah. And this is all part of, communication, right? We're communicating locally, globally, and pulling your website up on the screen here as we start to kind of wrap the conversation here for today. Yeah. Barbara, Boldt Global is your website. Are there any particular resources or anything you'd like me to point out as we have them up on screen here?
Yeah, there's a resource page that we've just put up. We're still kind of working some bugs out on that, but there is a resource on there that you should be able to download called Tips for Presenting Virtually During Work from Home. Okay. And
are you seeing it? Did I miss it? Helpful visuals, informing versus persuading. I'm not sure if I'm seeing it. I'm not seeing it on here. Is it the right page? Up at the top. Oh, blog. I'm sorry.
No, you need unbeing. There we go.
Blog. Okay.
I directed you wrong.
All right. There we go. This is all very impromptu, you guys. Barbara didn't know I was going to pull up her webpage right now so you can see her. So this is here we go.
There it is.
Presenting virtually during work from home. So I'm going to grab this link and I will put it up on the screen right now.
Super.
You guys can come back and check that out. And then I'll also include this in the playback. So in case you want to come back to that again, but let me put this one up on screen.
Well, that piece is written from the perspective of what you need to think about when presenting virtually in general, and then what you need to think about if they can see you, and what you need to think about if they can't see you. Right. So there are sort of like two different situations that I covered in that piece.
All right, awesome. And then I'm going to pull your LinkedIn up on screen here. Let's see if I can toggle back and forth between that menu and LinkedIn. I think it'll let me do it. I try. I'm learning a little bit more. It's kind of like, I feel like in some ways you're like a conductor of an orchestra, and it's trying to like navigate which,
Yeah, you come up
to the marching band. So we've got you on linkedin.com/in/Barbara Boldt. Barbara, are you open to accepting invitations from people who are watching today's session?
Absolutely. Love to. Love to. And I am pushing out more content. We're gearing up. I'm going to have my first e-newsletter coming out this week, and I will be pushing more things through LinkedIn, or be in the loop for receiving some of the writing that I'm doing mostly about presenting at this point, but I'm also doing some stuff on how culture impacts presenting.
Awesome.
Be happy to have you on my list.
Cool. Well, as we wrap here today, Barbara, I'll give you the opportunity for any final comments, tips. And we were talking a lot today about your virtual image. How are you showing up online? Any final comments for the groups or shout outs or anything else you'd like to offer before we wrap?
Well, I'd like to thank you. This was really fun. And I knew it would be fun because you're just fun. But I would just say, keep in mind, virtual space is public space. So think about what you're doing in it. And I think also think about how to make it work for you. I think there's a lot that it can do for us.
Great. Well, thank you, Barbara.
You're the master, Brenda. You're the master.
Hey, only because I learned from people like you. I learned from everybody, and I'm always still learning. I'm always improving, and I gotta get some amber tone things so I look a little bit warmer in here. But we're all good.
We can all work on looking better.
So as we wrap here today, guys, I just want to remind you a couple things. Please click to share the video. I'm watching the little ticker kind of coming across the screen as I'm going throughout here. Click to share the video. Share it with your network. If there was something that was particularly helpful from the video, comment on that. And when you invite Barbara to connect with you on LinkedIn, tell her she was phenomenal, amazing, insert adjective here. If there's something particularly helpful that she shared with you, include that in your invitation to connect with her, but definitely mention that you saw her here on the video. And then as a final ask, just go to mellermarketing.com/subscribe and you'll get notification of my upcoming LinkedIn Live, social media pie interviews, as well as I send out LinkedIn strategy tips and helpful information there. So Barbara, thank you. It was a delight speaking with you.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun, Brenda. Thanks so much.
Yeah. All right,
Have
guys.
a great rest of your day.
You too. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks for watching. And if you happen to be watching this in playback, still leave a comment below. I'll share the playback links back with Barbara, and I'll make sure to tag her if there's any questions that we didn't get to on today's session. So stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you guys online later in this week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.